Hi again, it's me UnusualSandwich and welcome to a new video. Today I'll be talking about my secondary tier list for Pyro. This will be split into multiple categories like the primaries one. The categories in question are close range and long range damage, utility, versatility, and my overall look on the weapon. However, I do need to mention that this tier list is to a decent degree opinionated, especially the overall section. But anyways, let's get on with the video. So like the primaries video, I'm going to first talk about each weapon and a general summary of them. The shotgun, the stock secondary weapon for Pyro. A hit scan weapon for medium to close range combat. For a stock weapon, it is decently reliable, but does suck in long range combat, and is also a great tool for fighting other Pyros. The reserve shooter, the shotgun that everyone hated. Basically, before Jungle Inferno, this weapon would mini crit any airborne target, so Pyros could simply air blast them and shoot. This has since been fixed due to its cheap mini crit status. Now the weapon will only mini crit targets who have been airborne via weapons. In short, this weapon is a great counter to flying classes like demo men or soldiers, or even Pyros to some degree. The panic attack. This shotgun has some upsides and downsides. On one side, you get a fixed bullet spread, which is good for knowing where to specifically aim when using the weapon. On the other side, however, the more shots you land, the more inaccurate the weapon will be. This makes the weapon value your first shot over anything else. Plus, damage per bullet is decreased, but is counteracted by the amount of bullets you have per shot, which is a lot more, and can result in a higher damage output than the actual shotgun itself. The flare gun. While not being the best weapon in close range combat, the flare gun is an exceptional tool when fighting fleeing players as long as you can predict their movement, which rewards you with a 90 damage crit as long as the target is burning. Because of this, I'd say the flare gun is the most high risk, high reward weapon out of each of the flares, because it really has no other special use outside of critting a target. The Scorch shot, an amazing utility weapon towards your team. From spamming chokes filled with enemies to destroying enemy stickies and even tracking down spies. With damage in comparison to the flare gun, it can only mini crit but can launch burning players an incredible amount, which depending on the situation you are actually in, can be a double-edged sword. The detonator, the original jumping tool for Pyro. This was mainly used as a transportation tool, but it still had some decent fighting capabilities. Obviously not as much as the others, but it's still there. For what it is, the fact that it still is able to do any damage is better than nothing, because it's still pretty good in long range combat. It won't do much damage, but will still cause afterburn. The MANMELTER, the only weapon outside of a primary that can actually extinguish people, and will actually grant a 90 damage guaranteed crit in the same style as the Diamondback or Frontier Justice. Normally I just use my primary to extinguish players, so to me it makes little difference. This weapon also has a faster projectile speed, which to me is better for close range combat, but still will throw off my aim when using it because I'm so used to using every other flare gun. It's still pretty good for long range combat in general. The gas passer. In its current state, all it's really used for is an area denial tool, which coats the enemy with gas if they happen to walk through it while it's still in existence. This gas causes the enemy to take the full effect of afterburn if they take any damage, which can even affect other Pyros, but takes a while to charge and is not already usable outside of spawn, which to me makes the weapon not too useful. The thermal thruster. Basically the Pyro's man treads, considering they deal the same amount of damage when falling on enemies. This is purely a transportation tool, which ironically makes you an easier target to snipers while you're in the air. I would use this if you're trying to get the jump on an enemy that doesn't know you're there, but really other than that it's not too reliable, and any other weapon could do better. Alright, now that I've given my general opinionated analysis on these weapons, I'm going to rank them in the categories like before. Okay, hold on. I need to mentally prepare myself to even say all of this, because there's a lot of info to go over. Surprisingly, the panic attack deals the most on a full damage meat shot, as you'll deal well over 100 damage on a non-crit shot, which is the most any shotgun can do without critical damage. Next is the stock shotgun. It can do roughly 100 damage on a point-blank meat shot, which is still perfectly fine. The reserve shooter comes next, as it has less ammo and makes no real difference within close-range combat. The MANMELTER comes next for its faster projectile speed, which can help in close-range combat. The flare gun comes next because it has the best flare damage in close range combat. Both the Scorch shot and detonator come next for their lackluster mini crit damage, while still being able to do some damage. The gas passer has no reason to be used, but go ahead if you wish. The thermal thruster is in a similar state, as all you can really do with it is get 3 times the falling damage on an enemy. Now for long range damage, the MANMELTER takes the top spot for its guaranteed crits, which have no fall off, which allows it to be amazing at long range if it hits. The flare gun comes next for its long range afterburn crit kills. The Scorch shot comes next for its long distance choke and area spam. The detonator is meh for long range damage, but is still a lot better than hit scan. Speaking of which, the shotgun takes the next spot for its okay damage. After that, the reserve shooter. It has the same amount of damage but has less in its clip, which makes it less reliable. The panic attack comes next for its awful weapon spread. Using this at long range is basically a death sentence to you. The gas passer comes next, as it is a gas can projectile, which is still weak if not used with anything, but is still okay in general. The thermal thruster comes last because it has nothing to do with long range combat in any way, shape, or form. Now for versatility. The Scorch shot reigns supreme for everything it can do. Destroying throwing stickies in groups, spy checking, decent damage output, and even crowd control. The detonator comes next for the fact that it is a transportation tool, but still has some decent fighting in general. Next is a reserve shooter for similar reasons as the shotgun, except for the fact that you can mini crit fleeing enemies. The shotgun comes next as it really doesn't matter who you're going against with it. If you can land a few meat shots with it, they're dead. The flare gun comes next for its general combat, and that it doesn't really matter who you're going up against. Really, it's the kind of weapon that benefits from being used in general and not really specific maps or game modes. The MANMELTER is decently useful for just casually extinguishing teammates and running in with multiple crits at your disposal. The panic attack comes next as I don't really see much use for it outside of it being really good in close combat and its faster deploy speed. The thermal thruster comes next as all it really would be great for is a transportation tool. And last, the gas passer is pretty much awful outside of MVM really. Now for utility. The thermal thruster takes its top spot as that's what the item was designed for, the sole purpose of transportation. Next comes the detonator, but not to the degree that the thruster prevails in. The SCORCH shot comes next as it can flare and jump, but not as good as the detonator. The gas passer comes next for being an area denial tool. Next, the panic attack for its faster deploy speed, really nothing else. Next comes the MANMELTER as it can extinguish teammates to give you crits. Next is a reserve shooter because it mini crits flying players, which gives it a good use. And for the last few weapons, flare gun, shotgun, they don't really have any utility to them, so I'm not going to bother with them. Now for overall. The SCORCH shot takes the top spot for its overall good rounded mechanics. Next comes the shotgun because of its decent damage output combined with it being hit scan in fights. The detonator comes afterward because of its amazing potential, but does get underappreciated compared to other weapons because it's not the best in every single category. As it's really good in one category but meh in another. The flare gun to me has always been a reliable tool. I may be a little bit rusty on flare aim, but still using this thing no matter what makes me enjoy playing Pyro. Next, the reserve shooter as it's decently useful in combat in general, but nowhere as reliable as the stock shotgun. Next, the MANMELTER as it has some potential, but to me it's not a reliable weapon as it throws off my aim because of its faster projectile speed. Next comes the thermal thruster because it's not terrible, but it's not incredibly useful either. Next is the panic attack as it has no reason to be used in my arsenal and it makes Pyro's range even worse than it was originally with the flamethrower. And last but not least, the gas passer. It's not too great overall, and I feel like something needs to be changed in order for me to actually use it, but that'll be for another time. Anyways, that's the end of the main video. I'm going to tell you about a small little bit of information. The next video I'm going to be making is on a weapon. I'm not going to say what it is yet, but don't worry, as I will eventually be making a melee tier list. I'm not going to say whenever it will happen, but I will be making it. That's all for the video. Bye.